Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition here at the Government Information Center. I am your host for the afternoon, and my name is Shianoa Desire Kahiha. Today, we are looking at a topic that kind of irks a whole lot of people, and it is quite advisable for us to listen with a keen ear and make sure that we pose the necessary questions that we have, because it's platforms like these that we get to have our questions with regards to the topic for the afternoon answered. And the topic is looking at labor exemptions, continuous operations, and overtime, Sundays, and public holidays. And in the studio, I have two representatives from the Ministry of Labor, and they will be assisting us to understand what are the different elements of these various parts of the topic, pardon me. I have Ms. Miriam Nicodemus in the studio, and she's the Deputy Director for International Relations and Advice. Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
I also have Ms. Penehafo Johannes, and she's the Senior Labor Relations Officer. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
And they are both from the Ministry of Labor, Industrial Relations and Employment Creation. As I said, these are topics that we tend to have, issues, or we come into contact with elements of them on our daily basis or in our workplaces. And we kick off with the simplest one. And we would like to ask Ms. Miriam to please assist us in differentiating between the various segments of overtime, Sunday work, and public holidays. What is the difference between these three?
Thank you. Overtime is when you exceed your ordinary working hours. Then it is called overtime work. Okay. And when it comes to Sunday and public holiday is when you perform work on Sunday and public holiday. But in terms of the differences, the pay also differ. Okay. The rates that we are using, they differ also, and my colleague also will attend to that in terms of the difference of payment. But in a nutshell, overtime is when you are exceeding your ordinary working hours, and Sunday is when you perform work on Sunday, and public holiday when you perform work on public holiday. Thank you.
Staying with that, because we are now talking a lot about the Sunday and public holidays. Is Saturday, does it form part of overtime worked hours for a person who ordinarily works between Monday and Friday?
If you work on a Saturday and it's not your ordinary working day, then it is overtime.
Okay.
Yes.
So Saturday is included?
Yes, it's overtime if you are not ordinarily working on a Saturday.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, we ask these questions specifically because these are part of the issues that people can sometimes run into. Yeah. And then also staying with that, if one is now having to work on a Saturday, when does the complete Saturday cover, what do they call it? Sunday, at some point, does it fall into Sunday hours, or does it remain as normal overtime hours?
It depends on where it falls. If many hours of a Saturday fell in a Sunday, then it will be regarded as Sunday.
Okay.
Yes, but if most of the hours they fall on a Saturday, then it's Saturday. The same also with Monday. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Penehafo, how many hours are permitted by the Labour Act without an approval from the Ministry of Labour?
Thank you very much for the question. The Labour Act makes a provision for the employers to allow the employees to work overtime without approval from the Ministry of Labour. Okay, and then that one will only happen if they are not exceeding 3 hours in a day, and they are not exceeding 10 hours in a week. For example, if they are working Monday to Wednesday and they are working 3 hours every day of overtime, then on a Wednesday it will be 9 hours. Okay. So on a Thursday, they are only allowed to work 1 hour, because if you add all those hours Monday to Wednesday, it will be 9 hours. If you add 1 hour for Thursday, then it will definitely be 10 hours. If you want to work now Friday, Saturday again, then you need to approach the ministry because you are now exceeding 10 hours in a week.
Okay.
And then if you are working on Saturday, for example, you want to work 4 hours on Saturday, or 5 hours or 6 hours on Saturday, as long as your Saturday is not your ordinary working day, obviously if you are called in to come work, maybe you work 8 hours or 6 hours. Regardless whether you are working that specific one Saturday, you need to approach the ministry for approval because you are exceeding 3 hours in a day. So it's actually 3 hours in a day and then not more than 10 hours in a week. If you are exceeding all those ones, then you need to approach the Ministry of Labour for approval.
Okay. But now in the case where approval has been granted by the Ministry of Labour, there's a process of application. We'll get to that a bit later on.
Yeah.
Are there hour limitations?
Yes, in terms of section 20, subsection 1, it talks about daily spread over.
Okay.
And as per the Act, the employees are not allowed to exceed the daily spread over of 12 hours unless they are working in an emergency or in an urgent environment, as per the Labour Act definition of urgent work. So we'll get to the definition of urgent work later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just for our viewers to understand, what does daily hour spread, what does that mean?
It just means that the employees are not allowed to work 12 hours consecutive unless you are operating now in an urgent work environment.
Okay.
So you cannot work throughout 12 hours consecutive without resting.
Okay.
Unless you are now performing urgent work as per the definition of urgent work in the Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in that now scenario, 12 hours act, for example, in a week of 5 days, it means then they're allowed to do a 3 hour spread per day. I mean, a 3 hour period per day, for example. But now if you get to the weekends, is it a thing of you may work 12 hours for the Saturday as long as there's a break in between, or is it 12 hours over the whole weekend? How does it then get, broken down?
As long as you work 12 hours, not consecutive, because you also need to consider the meal interval every after 5 hours.
Okay.
So the daily spread over, it means per day, you are not allowed to work consecutive 12 hours. So if you are working your 12 hours and there is a break in the middle, every after 5 hours, you take your meal interval, it's okay, no problem with that.
Okay. But then you are not allowed to exceed the 12 hours consecutive working without the break? Or is it a thing of, if I have an interval every 5 hours, can I then continue even beyond the 12 hours in that one Saturday, or beyond the 12 hours over the whole weekend?
It's not allowed like that.
These are the things that, we want to gain clarity on this, hence me asking, because these are questions that come up. And very few, people really gain or gauge a proper understanding of how these hours are to be laid out. Yes, Ms. Miriam, you'd like to add?
Yes, it's not allowed, but there's a manner in which how the ministry can allow you, which is called exemptions. And we will deal with exemptions later.
Okay.
Yes.
Our next question then, we stay with you, Ms. Miriam. How is overtime, Sundays and public holidays, how are they remunerated, the employees?
In terms of overtime, you look at the basic salary of the employee and you determine the daily rate.
Okay.
Once you get the daily rate, you times that with 1.5. That's the formula that we use for overtime. Yeah. And for Sunday pay and public holiday, you times the basic salary in terms of the daily rate with times 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but then again, if the employees are working continuous operation, which we will deal with it later, or they were scheduled to work on Sunday and public holiday, which means those are their ordinary working days, then the one part is already included in the salary.
Okay.
Yeah, so they only get ×1 on top of what they have earned for those hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
For layman's understanding, what does the 1.5 or the 2.0 represent?
Okay. Let's take someone who's earning not a daily, an hourly rate of $10, 10 Namibian dollars.
Yeah.
And if you work for 2 hours, then you times 2 hours times $10 times 1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, taking it simple, let's just work on 1 hour worked overtime. So it's a $10. Is your normal rate is $10 per hour. So in that overtime hour, what do you then get?
You get then a $15.
Okay.
Yes, if it is overtime.
Yeah.
And if it is Sunday pay or public holiday, then you get $20.
Okay. So
but again, if you were scheduled to work for those days are your ordinarily working days, then the $10 is already included in your basic salary. And then the employer will just have to add ×1, which is an extra $10 to make it double the rate.
Okay.
That is just for people who are ordinarily scheduled to work on public holiday and Sunday.
Okay.
And in the event that you were ordinarily scheduled to work on a Sunday and you have worked your 8 hours and you are done with your 8 hours and your employer asks you to work, let's say, for 3 extra hours, then those extra 3 hours will be times with 2 and not 1 anymore. Because this is now overtime on Sunday and public holiday.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So it's like an overtime on your overtime, or that becomes your overtime, if I can understand it correctly.
On Sunday and public holiday.
Yeah,
yes.
because normally you work on these days.
Yes.
So to put it simply, they are not seen as overtime days for you per se. And it's worked into your basic salary rate. But if your employer does ask you to exceed your normal operation hours, even on that Sunday, then that becomes your overtime, if we can explain it that way, for those Sundays and public holidays.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about clarity, and we always welcome questions and comments from our viewers, because it's platforms like these that we utilize to educate each other and help each other, or even highlight problems that we are having in our societies at various points. So you can find us on our social media platforms. These are where we are live streaming from. On Facebook, we are at Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. That's on Facebook, Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. You can also find us on our YouTube platform. We are also live streaming from there, and our handle there is MICT Namibia, MICT Namibia. For now, while we wait for your comments and questions to come through, we continue. And our next question goes to Ms. Penehafo, and we would like to find out from you, how are the employees who ordinarily work on Sundays and public holidays remunerated when they perform work on Sundays and public holidays? I think Ms. Miriam assisted us, pardon me, to answer that particular question. So we move on to the next one, which speaks to the application for exemption, I believe. What should the employer include in the application? What details are needed in the application for overtime, Sundays, and public holiday application? What is that application?
When the employer is applying for overtime, they need to clearly indicate it's either overtime or Sunday or public holiday, because those are 3 different things. They need to clearly indicate the category of employees affected. You just don't say employees of Ministry of Information. You say Ministry of Information, either Directorate Division, and then maybe you indicate Finance or HR. There should be a division or a category of employees classified that are going to perform overtime on Sundays. And then the next one, they should also indicate the proposed new limit. As much as we are saying not more than 3 hours in a day, not more than 10 hours, they should clearly indicate how many hours then you want the employees to perform. If you don't want now 3 hours, how many hours? Is it 4 hours? Is it 5 hours? or is it 3 hours on Saturday, or is it 10 hours, or how many hours do you want them to perform on Saturday as well, Sundays and public holiday? It should clearly come out. And then the other thing also, they should also look at the condition attached. Some of the application comes with conditions, so you should also clearly indicate if there is any condition attached to that. And then they should also indicate the period that you want your overtime to run. So definitely you cannot just apply to say you want our application to be approved. So you should indicate from when do you want it to be approved. And either for the financial year, like most of them, that's what they are doing. Indicate now from the first exact date, from the 1st of April 2022 until the following year, 31st March 2023, something like that. And then they should also attach the consent from the affected employees. So we cannot process an application without without the consent from the affected employees. So when we just don't want to say, yes, employees were consulted and they're in agreement, we need proof. The ministry need to say that, yes, indeed, this is the signatures of employees. Even on those signatures, we just don't need attendance register to say we had a meeting and this is the attendance register. There should be a subject on top of your consent, if it's now signature, indicating that these are the employees that are in agreement to perform overtime from when to when, from this hour to this hour, and they're in agreement. And then the employees can now put their signature. At least if you can say something like that, it's clear, and it's clearly telling the ED that yes, the employees were consulted and they're in agreement.
Okay. What if you have a scenario where an employee finds at a given point throughout this time period that was indicated that they cannot perform overtime duties? Are they allowed to say no?
The Act is clearly stating that if the employees agrees, but at the end of the day, you also need to look to consider the need of overtime. So you are also offering service to the employer. So if the employees decide not to work overtime, so I think yes, they can agree as much as the Act said they need to be consulted. At the end of the day, so the ED has to make the decision.
Okay. No, because we get scenarios where, for example, an employee, we're not saying it's for the whole time period that they don't want to work overtime. Let's just say somewhere in August, the employer is expecting them to work overtime. And for that week, that particular employee cannot perform these due to, I don't know, personal reasons or health or whatever. Are they allowed to say no or turn down the employer without necessarily, you know, having ramifications for that? That is what, you know, we're trying to understand. Yeah, yes, Ms. Miriam, please.
It's very difficult to say yes or no, because in the first place you have consented to say that you will perform that work. And now that you don't want to perform overtime, the employer can easily also discipline you, because it's like you are insubordinating. So at the end of the day, the employer and the employee, they have to really sit down and sort out that. It could be the person is having a legitimate reason why he cannot perform work, and I don't think that the employer will punish you for that also at the end of the day. If you sit down and you talk to your employer to say that this weekend I have maybe a funeral that I need to attend to and I cannot perform overtime, the employer will not say no. But then maybe somewhere in the other week you have to make sure that you build in those hours that you have lost during the weekend. Yes.
Okay. We're educating each other, and I think really I'm very grateful, you know, that clarity is being brought to some of these issues, because these are issues that people are dealing with out there, where you've got people, you have had people being forced, you know, to have unpaid days of work because of having not been able to do overtime work at some point or another. Getting on to our next question, and this one we would like to have Ms. Miriam assist us with this one. Which categories of employees are permitted to perform work on Sundays and public holidays without an approval from the Labour Ministry?
Those are the categories of employees because of the nature of their work. The employer requires them to work on Sunday and public holiday. You have employees who are performing agent work. You have employees who are working in the shops, employees working in hotels, employees who are working also in the agriculture setup, like on the farm, employees who are working also in the domestic setup, like domestic workers. Their nature of employment allows them to work on Sunday. But that does not mean that when you work on Sunday and public holiday without an approval, or if the law does not say that your employer has to apply to the Ministry of Labor, that you must not be paid. You are still entitled to get your double the rate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned something a bit earlier on there in your answer. Urgent work. What classifies urgent work?
Urgent work, in terms of the Labor Act, it's work if you have, let's say you are at the airport and you are performing, maybe you are an immigration officer, and you make sure that if the plane lands, you clear those people through that process. Now, if you are not classified as urgent work, you won't be able to attend to those people, especially if the flight was delayed. That's one of the examples that we give. Or if you are working like at the petrol station and there are trucks that come and fill up there and they are transporting goods that are perishable or they are transporting passengers, those are the type of urgent work. And the law says that you don't need to apply to the ministry in terms of overtime, in terms of Sunday, and in terms of public holiday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Penahafo, we would like to then hear from you. Employees that are performing this urgent work, are they required to apply for overtime?
Employees that are performing urgent work as per the definition of urgent work in the Labor Act, as Ms. Miriam alluded to, they are already permitted by the law to exceed the prescribed maximum overtime hours. So these are the employees that now, the one that are working in the hospitals, emergency services, and all that. So they are already granted permission to work without an approval. However, they must be remunerated as per the Act. So it does not mean that they will not be paid as per the Act. It's just that you don't need to apply because these are work which is connected to emergency. So the moment you come to our office and apply, it's a process while maybe there's a water that bursts somewhere else.
Yes.
So these employees are allowed to work without an approval and they must be paid as per the Act.
Ms. Miriam, Ms. Penahafo now mentioned the process that an application goes through. And I think this brings us to our next question. We would like to know, how long does this application process take before you get to the point of approval?
If your application is having all the required information, like the letter of consent is there, you have your overtime limit, you have the categories of employees that needs to be the increase that needs to be increased. It takes like 3 to 4 days for that approval. But then most of the time you find an application is submitted, there are no consent, there are no new overtime limit listed. So it creates a back and forth between our officers and that of the applicant. And it delays. So we, at this time also, I think it's better if we can call on the applicants when they are applying for overtime. They have to make sure that they are adhering to what the law is saying, especially in terms of the overtime limit, because the ED has to set the new limit. The ED cannot just set the new limit out of the blue. He has to be guided by what you want. And also Penahafo mentioned earlier the issue of spread over. It's very important when you are putting your limit also, you are not exceeding the spread over, because the spread over, the law says that you can't work more than 12 hours.
Okay. And I'm staying now with that spread over. For example, if you are now trying to determine these limits, and the spread over speaks about 12 hours, can an ED then, for example, have a scenario, this is just hypothetically speaking, have a scenario where they request for 12 hours on a Saturday, 12 obviously with the breaks included, 12 hours on a Saturday, 12 hours on a Sunday, and let's say set a 4-hour limit for the Monday to Friday. Is that something that's workable or doable?
The spread over is for 12 hours. And when you are applying for overtime, let's take an example of a Saturday. If Saturday is not your ordinary working day, which means you can work those 12 hours. But when you are working the 12 hours that you are given, which is now the limit in terms of the day is increased to 12 hours. But that doesn't mean that you are exempted to take meal intervals. So for every 5th hour, you have to get a meal interval. Now, in the event that the operation is of such a nature that you won't be able to get that, then you have to ask for exemption, and we will deal with exemption shortly.
I think I'm just trying to gain that clarity of, can a person have such a scenario where you have this ED requesting for his staff member, obviously with the consent and consultation of his directors and whoever else who needs to be involved, where they then set this limitations to Monday to Friday, employees can work from, I don't know, 5 till 8, or 9 in the evening. And then you have Saturdays where they work for those 12 hours with the meal intervals, of course, and then they come back on Sundays if the work requires for another 12 hours with the meal intervals as well. So something like that is allowed.
Yes, it's allowed.
Okay, okay. We then come to, can the employer apply via the regional office? And I think maybe, Penhafo, maybe you can assist us with that one.
Unfortunately, the approval of these applications lies with the ED and then sometimes the minister, who are based in Windhoek. And the office that is dealing with all those applications, it's only here in Windhoek. Yes, they can approach our regional office for advice and for guidance. However, it will also be advisable because most of them, they are so urgent, these applications. You will find an application, they want to start on a Friday, they are bringing it on a Thursday. Or sometimes they want to start on the following week, Monday, they are bringing it on a Friday. So we always advise that sometimes they can courier to our office, sometimes they can call and get emails so that they can just be delivered on time here at our office in Windhoek.
No, thank you very much. That is one of our sections that we were dealing with, and that was speaking to overtime, Sundays, and public holidays. We now move over to the second segment of our session for this afternoon, and here we are looking at continuous operations and exemptions. And you can also give us a call into the studio if you have any questions regarding any of these topics that we're discussing this afternoon. The number in the studio is 061, that's the area code, 400397. 400397. We now continue with our segment, second part of the segment, and as I said, it is dealing with exemptions and continuous operations. And the first question we would like to pose to Ms. Penhafo, because we want to understand, what is continuous operations?
Continuous operation is an operation which does not stop. And it requires the operation to run on a 24-hour basis, and then it should be Monday to Sunday.
Wow.
So, for example, it normally happening in the mining industry. There is a certain fact that it's saying they should not stop, or because of a certain operation. So those are the operations that will require them to work 24 hours, and you need an approval from the minister for you to operate like that.
So it's basically people who work on shifts. I mean, the employees in these segments will be working on shifts then. Because, for example, your hospitals, for example, do they then qualify to be categorized as continuous operations? The hospitals?
Yeah, it's also on continuous. It's just that there is a special provision for them. That's why they don't need to apply.
Ms. Miriam, what is exemptions, or what are exemptions and variations?
Exemptions in terms of the Labour Act has been dealt with under Section 139, the same with variation. When you are applying for exemption, you are applying for a specific provision of the Act not to apply to your employees. and it's been done under Chapter 3, which deals with the basic condition of employment. But there are exceptions to that. You can't be exempted when it comes to Section 33 and Section 35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is now dismissal section, and then the one that deals with severance payment, you can't be exempted or you can't vary that. Yeah, but then in terms of variation, we had 5 years ago a variation for the fishing sector, which expired last year, and right now the members or the parties to the collective agreement, they have requested the minister to look into that so that the whole sector can be given another variation for condition of employment, and that is just for the fishers.
Okay.
But the companies, they apply for exemptions, and the same with variation. But then we find out that there are some companies who don't want to pay their employees overtime, and then they sort of give them a trade-off for off days, which is very wrong. Okay. Because it's only the Minister of Labor that can vary the condition of employment. Oh. If someone has worked for overtime, and let's say the person worked for 10 hours, this person must be paid his overtime in money. Oh. You can't say that I'm giving you off days because I don't have money, unless if you have asked the Minister of Labor to vary that section that deals with the payment of overtime. So we understand there are employers that are doing that, but then people don't come forth to say it's a certain employer or a certain company. You just hear companies are doing that, but I think it's better this time around if we can tell the nation out there to say that you only vary when the employer has applied for variation and the minister has granted that. If an employee has worked his overtime, you don't have the right to trade it off and give the person off days. It's illegal. Okay. Yes.
Okay. And you said something a little earlier on now within this particular answer, where people don't necessarily come forth to state that you know these companies are doing this. Is it maybe not out of fear of stigmatization or so on from the employers? Is there maybe a platform that people can do this under, how do they call it? Anonymous?
Anonymous.
Anonymous,
yes.
you know.
We have an SMS line, 66111. They can send SMSs to that SMS line. And then we will treat it confidential for us not to reveal their names. But then we need the name of the company so that we can send out the labor inspectors, and the labor inspectors can go to the bottom of the matter and make sure that the employees are paid their overtime. And it's also happening in government, that's what we understand. But people don't come forth to say that it's the Ministry of Labor that is trading our overtime money with off days. So please, I want to urge the workers, if you were really subjected to that, you have to come to the Ministry of Labor, and then the inspector will make sure that you get your overtime payment.
No, it's good. You see, I said it, and I keep saying it, that sometimes really these platforms do assist. Because most likely these employees were scared of you know, being singled out or having to suffer some consequences if they did actually. And some maybe didn't even know that it's illegal. So it's good, and I'm very glad that we are able to, you know, use our GIC Center to educate about the legalities of some of the actions that you know, parties, you know, get involved in. Our next question then speaks to the benefits. What are the benefits of continuous operations?
The benefits of continuous operation really is to allow your operation to continue without any interruption. And when the employees are on a continuous operation shift, they are also exempted from meal interval, because the understanding is that the operation has to continue without any interruption. So they are not allowed to take meals interval. But you know how we are as people, somehow you will need like a 10 minutes break, but that 10 minutes break cannot also be deducted from your 8 hour that you are working.
Yes.
And the other thing also when it comes to continuous operation, since that we indicated already that Sundays and public holiday becomes ordinary working day. So it means also in terms of your leave days, when you are going to take your leave, they have to consider those days also as your leave days. If you were scheduled to work on a Sunday, then that Sunday is your ordinary working day, then your leave must also be counted as such. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I'm coming back to the nature of the environment calls for continuous work, where we stated that the employer then cannot necessarily take meal breaks as per, you know, the normal other people where we have to take an hour. But how are these breaks controlled? Is there some documentation that, you know, needs to, where it's included within, pardon me, in the documentation when application is made by the company for this continuous work application? Who regulates how long these breaks are? Why I'm asking this is, isn't there a risk of fatigue on the employee?
The risk of fatigue is there. That's why the employer, most of the employers really, they built in those rest breaks in the 8 hours.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they really built in, and there are some companies even that give even 30 minutes break also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the understanding is that the operation is continuous.
Yeah.
So you can't give a person a 1 hour meal interval where he has to walk away from the workstation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandably so. You're welcome to give us your questions at our various platforms. Our social media lines are open for you to do so. You can, you know, post your comments on our platforms as well as your questions. You can find us at MICT Namibia. That's on YouTube. That's the channel on YouTube. And then on Facebook, we're also live streaming from there. And our handle there is Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, Republic of Namibia. You can give us a call in the studio, and our number is 061, that's the area code, 400-397, 400-397. While we wait on you, we continue with the session, and our next question goes to Ms. Penehafo, where we would like to know, is there any application form for continuous operations, and what should the employer submit if they want to apply for continuous operation?
Continuous operation, it's granted in terms of Section 15 of the Labour Act. And then there is no specific form for continuous operation.
Okay.
So the employer should apply in a form of a letter, which should be directed to the minister, because he's the one to approve the continuous operation.
Yeah.
And then they should obviously clearly indicate the categories of employees affected, not just to say the employees of ministry of whatever. So they should clearly indicate which category or which department is affected by continuous operation. And then in their application also they should clearly indicate their shift pattern. We want to see how many hours or how many hours per shift. Is it 8 hours? Is it 6 hours? Is it 7 hours? So, and we want to see also whether their rest period is also counted, because as per the Act, Section 20, subsection 2, is talking about the weekly rest period, of which the employees every week they are supposed to rest for at least 36 hours.
Okay.
So they should also clearly indicate that, and then they should also clearly indicate the payment involved. So how are you going to pay your overtime in case people work overtime? How are you going to pay your Sunday? How are you going to pay your public holidays? How are you going to pay your night shift? So because all those things, the minister need to see all those things before we consider the application. And then they should also attach now the shift roster or the shift schedule, so that we can see and verify that indeed, yes, these are the hours that they will work, these are the break, like weekly rest period, and how many hours, and to check if there is any exemption involved in that shift. Yeah.
Okay. In the same vein, we would like to then ask Ms. Miriam, is there any application for exemption or variation?
Yes, we have an application. It's called LM34. It can be found in the regulations relating to the Labour Act. And the form really, it's even having instructions on how to go about when one is applying for exemption or variation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of consultation, what does the Act say when it comes to continuous operations? Ms. Penhafo?
When it comes to continuous operation, the Act is very silent when it comes to consultations.
Oh, okay.
So because you are declaring the operation, not necessarily the people. So the Act is silent when you are declaring an operation as a continuous operation. However, the ministry always advocate for consult the employees because you are changing someone's conditions of employment sometimes. So we always say consult the employees, but the Act is clearly silent on that. It did not say when you are applying for continuous operation, there must be consultation. Not like when it's come to exemption. Exemption is very clear. Section 139 is saying the minister must be satisfied that the employees were consulted. But when it comes to continuous operation, it's not indicated to say the employees must be consulted. As long as it's a pure continuous operation, which we say is 8 hours per day, rest period is considered, everything is paid as per the Act, then the Act is silent on that.
Okay, okay. But isn't that a bit dangerous with regards to employee protection? Is there any work being done to maybe change that and create some form of a what do you call it? A backdrop that can be used by employers with regards to that?
The Ministry of Labour with the social partners, when I say social partners, I mean the employers and the workers. We have a task force that was put in place 3 years ago, and they are looking into the amendments of the Labour Act. And one area where we are going to introduce amendments is Section 15. Yeah, because we realize there's that loophole. Yes,
okay, okay.
But without that amendment, we are advocating for consultation, although legally it's not there.
Okay.
Yeah, because as she mentioned, sometimes really continuous operation, whether you are saying it's the operation that is being declared as continuous, it changes also the condition of employment where people are allowed to come and work on Saturday, which becomes their ordinary working day, whereas it was not like that before.
No, it's comforting to know that the loophole was identified and that there is work being done to rectify that. I mean, our laws and acts are living documents, and as time and things evolve and change, it's just right that we find ways to try and make sure that we catch up and stay updated with this. We've got Mandume from Arandas, and good afternoon, Mandume. How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I am very well. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. How would you like to contribute to the conversation?
No, I just want to get some information there.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm working in a mining industry.
Pardon me, you're working in a?
Mining industry.
Yes.
So, as I've been listening to you about overtime, I was not working in that. Yes, and I work out shift worker.
You work shift work?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not paid Saturday, Sunday, and Saturday. Is that right?
Okay. Ms. Miriam, I believe that is a question that we will be able to answer for you. Do you have any other question or comment?
No, it's just about it.
Okay. No, Ms. Miriam will answer that once you go off air.
Okay.
Thank you. That's Mandume from Arandas, and I think his question is quite straightforward. Ms. Miriam?
He is claiming that he's not been paid overtime for Saturday and Sunday.
And public holidays,
and public holidays. And he is from the mining sector. Or the mining company, but he did not indicate whether that company was declared as continuous operation or not.
Okay.
Yeah, and if it was declared as continuous operation, Saturday, Sunday, and public holiday becomes ordinary working days.
Okay.
So the person will be booked in to work for those days. And the only thing that you get is your Sunday pay, which is ×1, which we have explained already, because the other half already is in the remuneration. Yeah. And Saturday is an ordinary working day. But if if the company was not declared as continuous operation, then he could have got ×2 for Sunday.
Okay.
And this ×2 is just for basic salary. So, but with continuous operation is your full remuneration that you get for that day, which include all your benefits. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pity that he did not say that the operation is declared as continuous or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mandume, I hope we have answered your question with regards to your overtime pay. There are two different categories, obviously, based on the declaration of whether or not the company is, applied for continuous operations or not. But please don't hesitate to call us back if you have further questions on that matter. We now continue with a few more questions to our panelists. While we have them here, we would like to extract as much information out of them as possible. And you are most welcome to also call us and give your input, comments, and questions to them as well. We would then like to find out, can a company reapply for continuous operation or exemption or variation when it's expired, even if the condition did not change?
Yes, the fact that the continuous operation status is given for a fixed period, the same with exemption and variation is given for a fixed period. Once it expired, you have to apply again.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's just to make sure that you are still within...
You are complying with the law. Yes.
Okay. Are there any scenarios where you have had to turn down a reapplication? And if yes, can you give us an example of the scenarios of such?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because most of the time they apply on the same condition. Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Benahafo, can the employer via the regional office apply for continuous operation or exemption?
It's still the same with the application for overtime, Sundays, and public holiday. It's only the minister that can approve exemptions and continuous operation. Therefore, the application needs to be submitted at the head office. Okay. So, yeah, they can either courier it or they can send an email as long as they contact us. And then they can just go to our regional office for guidance and for advice. Okay,
okay. We are drawing close to the end of our session for this afternoon. But before we do so, Ms. Miriam, is our understanding correct that the minister can extend collective agreement within an industry to non-parties? If so, can you please explain the procedure of application, and can an employer be exempted from the collective agreement?
Collective agreements, maybe I should first try to explain what it is.
Yes.
It is an agreement that the employer entered into with a recognized trade union. And this agreement is legally binding on the parties.
Okay.
Yeah, and currently we have agreements that were extended to industries. We have the construction industry where they have a collective agreement that was extended. The same with security industry. The collective agreement was extended, and with agriculture sector. And the extended collective agreements, they are the ones that set up the minimum wages in those industries. Okay. In terms of the application for extension, the parties to the agreement may approach the minister for the minister to extend that agreement, because remember the agreement is between the two parties, for it to be extended to the whole industry. So the parties have then to apply to the minister. The minister will then call for objections through the government gazette, and the call will run for 30 days. Okay. And after 30 days, if the minister did not receive any objection, the minister will then go back to the collective agreement and look at it and see whether it's not in conflict with the Namibian constitution, and see whether it is offering more favorable condition. If it is offering less favorable condition than what the previous agreement was offering, then it cannot be extended.
Okay.
The minister also will have to look at whether the agreement is having the dispute resolution process built in for the interpretation of that agreement and the enforcement and the application. So once all these things are in order, then the minister can extend this agreement to the non-participants, and then it will be applicable to each and everyone in that industry. And in terms of the exemption, any party can apply for exemption, but then there must be some special circumstances that exist for you not to be, for the agreement not to apply to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we had previously security companies that wanted to be exempted because they don't want to pay the minimum wage that is set up in the collective agreement. And the minister was not really convinced to say that these companies has to be exempted because what most of the companies do, they when they are tendering, they are tendering with lower bids value. Just to go back and ask for exemption, but that is not fair in terms of even competition. You will get them this the tender, but at the end of the day, you won't be able to deliver on the tender.
That's true. That's true. It's good to know that there are a lot of elements that go into, or go under scrutiny during this process. And just to make sure that, and I think, or I believe from my understanding, that this is geared to ensuring the protection of the individual. And I believe it's not just the employees. It also involves the protection of the employer at the end of the day, all parties involved. At this point, I'd like to know any closing remarks from our ladies here in the studio?
From our side, really, we would like to thank you for offering us this opportunity to share with the public the work that we are doing under the Division International Relations and Advice. We are also planning to go out and to have meetings with stakeholders. The last quarter, we were in the south. My colleague Penny was in the south. We had a roadshow there. And we got a lot of clients who came to ask, especially the issue of overtime payments. People are not aware in terms of the rates and also the exemptions, how they work. So we would like really to thank you from our side for availing us this opportunity to share with the public what we are doing in the Ministry of Labor. And our offices, really, they are open. Before you even apply for an exemption or for overtime, you can call us so that we can guide you correctly and for us not to delay your application at the end of the day.
And you said that SMS line was 66111?
Yeah, the SMS line, just to repeat again, it's 66111. Yes, you can just drop us an SMS. And you can also go on our Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We also have an Instagram page. And we have our website also, where you can also log in and then you can also put some comments. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Penahafa?
I'm just encouraging companies to comply with the Act. It's the right thing to do. And our offices are open, as Ms. Miriam have indicated. So you don't need to stress with these applications. I know that they are stressful sometimes, but we will get through it. Just approach our office, we will guide you, we'll give you directions until you get it right.
There you hear it. Their offices are open. They are willing to deliver that service, that will assist you to ensure that your application is done properly and thoroughly, and also that you've got all the information necessary for you to go through all these various procedures without necessarily having headaches, if I can call it that. From us here in the studio, we'd like to thank our panelists for their time to come and speak to our communities and societies about these very important or pertinent topics that, as you said, your last roadshow was evident that people need this information. And hopefully this is just one such platform that such information can be spread. From myself, Shianwa Desire Kahia, along with my production crew, it's bye-bye.